Good morning. How'd you enjoy the winter monsoon? So, Randy, you don't want to do the greeting this morning?
I think this morning I'm just going to watch.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
There's a joke about what happens to Universalists and Unitarians after death. It is said that at a fork in the celestial road, the Universalists follow a sign pointing in one direction that reads, "Heaven this way," while the Unitarians follow a sign pointing another direction that reads, "Discussion of heaven this way." Of course, this is a wildly simplistic representation of the Unitarian approach, and, of course, it's also strikingly apt. Today, we're looking at the part of us that lives inside a rich internal world of thoughts and ideas and knowledge and imagination, sometimes living there instead of living in the physical world and in the challenging world of human relationships. So I was going to suggest, playfully, instead of greeting one another as we might normally do on a Sunday, that today we turn to someone near us or to our fellow Zoomers online and discuss the origins of human greetings, the historical significance of various greeting forms, the varieties of greetings within different cultures and communities and languages, and or the latest research on the neurophysiology of eye contact, vocal tone, and non-exploitive touch in the experience of human greeting. Now, here's the thing, that would excite or relieve some of us.
Good morning. My name is Randy McKean. I am your worship associate for this morning's service. This year, we have been exploring the values proposed for a revision to Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association's bylaws and rules. For this month of May, already? May? The value is pluralism. So I love these values, all 7 of them, but this is one where my self-centeredness gets in the way. The definition of pluralism begins, we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. Hey, that's me, myself, and I. I'm a liberal, open-minded guy. I see all sides of the coin. I'm a modern version of poet Walt Whitman. You know, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. I may be a 7, but I'm also an Aries and a dragon. But as soon as you and I begin a conversation, I sense the limitations in this self-celebration. We may agree on many things, but you have insights and experiences different than mine. Your way of seeing things may alter or contradict my views. You know stuff too. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So it's the challenge and promise of pluralism. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Let us get outside of ourselves, truly listen to others, find out where each other are coming from. Let us seek to recognize each other and make room for one another. So with that, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of the mountains. May we revel in conversing, contradicting, and containing multitudes together.
Thank you for the delicious quiet. powerful quiet. In the Enneagram, which is a system that tries to name 9 personality patterns and sets of drives, point 5 is known as the investigator, the thinker, the innovator, the observer, the specialist, the expert. You get the idea. Drawing on a variety of sources, here's a skim across that surface. This is the part of us that is always questioning, always searching, driven to understand how things work and why, always trying to build our stash of knowledge of which we can never really have enough or too much. The part of us that is endlessly curious, thus the question mark on the wall this morning. And all the books, thank you, Linda. The part of us that values intellectual integrity more than social acceptance. Resonating at all? The 5 is the part of us and of those we love that's not inclined to take other people's word for truth, but to test it out and think it through for ourselves. The part of us that spends time observing before participating, which is one way to learn how things work, to watch first. Part of us that spends a lot of time contemplating and analyzing. A part of us that needs a great deal of alone time and privacy and strong boundaries. The part of us that can see how the pieces fit together and see brilliant solutions that no one else sees. The part of us and others that relives experiences in our heads over and over after the fact, that runs detailed possible future scenarios through our minds ahead of time. The part of us for which the world of ideas and intellect feels safer than the real world. The real world. For a 5, the mind is more than a resource. The mind is a refuge, a comfortable and comforting oasis, the place to which we're prone to withdraw from painful realities and messy human relationships, and sometimes from life, detaching from our feelings in the process. As with other head types, the underlying emotion for a 5 is fear, though 5s don't often recognize that fear is shaping their ways of being. They've detached from the emotions. This cool, analytical, objective, outwardly calm part of us is at risk always of substituting knowledge and information for connection, at risk of analyzing and thinking about life rather than living it. Doesn't necessarily happen, but that's the risk. Think absent-minded professor, or brilliant and socially underdeveloped researcher, or contemplative intellectual philosopher, or quiet bookworm, or the person who talks your ear off with deep knowledge of an astoundingly specific and obscure subject. Like mitochondria in 18th century Peruvian planarian flatworm stem cells, for example. Unaware, apparently, that you're not interested in what they're talking about. So I know a lot of you have spent time with the Enneagram. What else would you say about 5s? What's important to say and know about 5s and Fiveness? What would you add? They can be a dilettante. Kind of a know-it-all. Often interested in psychology, what makes people work. 5s are often interested in typing things, typing programs like the Enneagram, for example. Typing systems that help us understand, how do I work? How do other people work? What else about 5s?
Controlling social transitions.
Controlling social transitions, right. Analytic, yeah, it's really powerful analysis capability.
Looking for a better way, always trying to find the best way to.
Always looking for a better way, looking for the best way, yeah. Some famous 5s, according to somebody: Stephen Hawking, Jane Goodall, Charles Darwin, not surprising, right? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Amelia Earhart, Severus Snape, Vincent van Gogh, Sinead O'Connor, Georgia O'Keeffe, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who is one of the developers of the COVID-19 vaccine, Lily Tomlin, Albert Einstein, Oliver Sacks, Bill Gates, and a whole lot of other scientists and techies. Emily Dickinson, Ursula K. Le Guin, Glenn Gould, Alfred Hitchcock, Jodie Foster, Annie Leibovitz, Fox Mulder from the X-Files, Lady Gaga, and Sherlock Holmes, of course. What do you think is the country that epitomizes fiveness with what we know about it? What country might epitomize fiveness? United Kingdom, Great Britain, yeah, you went right there. The animal? This is for fun. The owl, and or the fox, yeah, the owl and the fox. So why fiveness? What's going on there? So I'm going to talk about childhood, but with this caveat, just this reminder that the experiences of our childhood in this teaching don't determine our personality, but how we react to the experiences of our childhood can tell us about our personality. It sheds light on who we are. It doesn't make us who we are, because people experience the same things and respond very differently. So people who identify primarily as a 5 report feeling crowded out in their families when they were young, sometimes afraid of their caregivers and sometimes simply overshadowed by their caregivers or their siblings' needs. Since it's too painful to keep not getting what you need, to not get your needs met, young 5s survive by minimizing their physical and emotional needs. I'm not going to need too much. And by, this makes perfect sense, retreating into the world inside their head and imagination, where they can feel more secure and have more control. And by detaching from their feelings so they won't hurt so much. In essence, they make a contract with their caregivers. Don't ask too much of me, and I won't ask too much of you. Often 5s were quiet, self-sufficient, low-maintenance, independent children who shied away from playing with others, occupying themselves instead with books, musical instruments, computers, with collecting things, and by focusing very deeply on acquiring specific skills or specific knowledge. Anybody identify with this? Yeah, a few in the room. The basic fear of a 5, and the 5 in us, is of being helpless, useless, incapable, or incompetent. Fear that the world and people are too demanding and that we don't have enough inner resources to meet those demands. So acquiring very specific knowledge becomes a way to try to feel valued. If I have the knowledge that nobody else has, then I'll be valued and I'll have a place in the world. And I won't have to interact with people too much emotionally, right? I'm going to zero in on a very specified body of knowledge. Now, although it's not my primary type, I have a whole lot of 5 in me. In fact, for 14 years, I identified as a 5, mistakenly, it turns out. But I have a lot of 5 in me. I am a person who tends to observe from the outside first, and often for a long time, before I decide to jump in and take part. It's only after I've analyzed it and I see how it's working and I kind of get a grip on it, then I'll join in, which is usually just as everyone else is packing up to go home. They've all had a blast and they're done. I can't tell you how many conferences have felt like this. I'm just about to get rolling and it ends, right? Everyone goes home. I have been calm in many otherwise high emotion situations because I learned to disconnect from my emotions. Like many 5s, often able to feel my real emotions only when I'm alone afterwards. Not in the moment, but afterwards. So I can stay very calm in very tense situations because I'm not feeling those things. And sometimes it's as soon as stepping out of the room that I feel, right? It doesn't necessarily long, it just has to be alone where I can work here and not have to manage anyone else's emotions. That's when I'll feel. Or as soon as the doors close on a bus and it drives away with someone I love, and then I'll realize what I'm feeling, right? It's not that the feelings are being consciously held away, it's that they're not even available, right, until I'm alone sometimes. Like many fives, I often replay an experience over and over in my mind afterwards. Not to solve it so much as to experience it, right? If I didn't experience it in the moment, I'll play it in my head and experience it then. That's when I'll feel what was going on. Studying Fiveness helped me to understand my tendency to carry on relationships inside my head. So even when I'm not seeing or talking to someone for years, the relationship continues to grow and play out, and it feels close and it feels strong, which may come as a surprise to the other person eventually, unless they're like me and they've kept it alive too. My closest friends are exactly that. We might not see each other for ages. Wow, we're still totally connected. Other people, not so much, because they have no idea that we're connected. Plays out inside instead of in real life. And in Grand Five style, I also often feel that I'm not ready to make a decision because I just need a little bit more information. Perpetually need a little bit more information, right? Can never have quite enough information to go ahead and make that decision. I'm seeing some knowing physical postures in the room. The great gifts of fiveness can be tremendous insight and understanding, coupled with powerful expertise. The ability to see many points of view at the same time, and an ability to understand the whole and all the parts, keen powers of perception and observation, and often one or two senses that are especially and unusually highly developed. Lifelong curiosity, inventive innovation, the ability with humor to provoke people to think more deeply. Before I continue, and before Randy shares with us a musical thread to follow, I invite us all to sing a musical thread in a moment. The words of John Andrew's story, which take a rather intellectual approach to the deep and deeply felt ideal of pluralism as a value. He takes it, in fact, all the way to outer space, and the possibility that someday we may encounter life from somewhere else in the universe. And he writes that of that pluralism on that really big scale, right? He writes on this really big kind of intellectual scale, really to speak to and promote the valuing of difference right here among us, close to home, on this planet and in this room. Here are his words. Children of the human race, offspring of our Mother Earth, not alone in endless space has our planet given birth. Far across the cosmic skies, countless suns in glory blaze. And from untold planets rise endless canticles, endless songs of praise. Should some signs of others reach this, our lonely planet Earth, differences of form and speech must not hide our common worth. When at length our minds are free, and the clouds of fear disperse, then at last we'll learn to be children of the universe.
This weekend, I'm thinking about my late music teacher, Paul Smoker. He was a trumpet player and educator who taught at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I studied music from 1982 to 1986. This weekend, there is a series of concerts celebrating his life and music being held in Rochester, New York, where Paul lived and played from 1990 until his death in 2016. I was unable to attend, but he is on my mind. Paul ran the jazz program at Coe. His intense teaching style, insisting on complete dedication to the music, was life-changing for some, off-putting to others, and intriguing but overwhelming for those of us still finding our way. He stressed that one had to put one's heart and soul into the music. You couldn't fake commitment. But to master the craft, you also had to know the tunes, the melodies, the chord changes, the original lyrics, famous solos by legendary players. So when confronted with the vast tradition of jazz virtuosos, my 18-year-old alto sax playing self from small town Iowa froze. I felt I needed to know the music inside and out before I dared get on the bandstand. Studying the thicket of notes in a saxophone solo by Charlie Parker or John Coltrane would shut me down. I would leave the practice room for the latest campus party, wondering what was the use. How could I ever know what I needed to know? Well, a man named Thelonious Sphere Monk saved me. He passed away in 1982, the year I started college, but Monk's compositions were part of the jazz canon that I was trying to assimilate. When we played one of his quirky, playful, odd pieces, I felt he was talking to me, saying, "Listen to this idea, it's a good one." In tunes like Ask Me Now, Well You Needn't, Rhythmening, or Little Rudy Tooty, motifs would twist and turn, stutter and repeat and clash against one another. As a player, one could grab onto one of his thoughts and join in and play. So one of my favorite examples of this is his piece, Misterioso. It's a 12-bar blues, that song form often described as a primal human response to hardship and suffering. The late Bill Douglas used to describe the blues' three-part harmonic structure in almost mystical terms as meeting some basic need in the universe. In Misterioso, Monk has chosen to use a pair of stilts to navigate this primordial swamp. An otherwise straightforward stepwise melody is enhanced by by echoing every note at the large interval of a sixth or 6 scale degrees above. It sounds like someone taking giant strides up and down small hills and valleys. One hears the constant vertical leap, but also 2 parallel melodies, one low, the other high, like the feet and the head of the stilt walker. When one improvises on this tune, you could choose to dance and swing like any other blues changes, but it's a heck of a lot more enjoyable and challenging if you try it on stilts. So eventually, Paul's messages got through to me. We went on to work together in later years, but Monk started it all. Monk said, "Use your head, kid, but don't overthink it. Always remember, have fun with it." Yes, right. These are them.
you never know what's going to happen on a Sunday morning. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. It's such a treat when you play, Randy. Thank you. So to close, I'm about to oversimplify some more to get to a general reality beneath the stereotypes. Universalists arrived at their heresy, the truth that would not let them go, most often through the workings of their hearts. For them, the idea of hell, of eternal punishment for finite sins, did not make emotional sense. And so their hearts and their feelings reordered their intellectual understandings. And then they looked to the Bible for affirmation of what they already knew in their hearts to be true, that the God they knew is absolute love and absolutely loving. Besides, they could then ask, logically, why would a God who had made all the rules set up such a painfully unfair scenario? The central Universalist message started most often in the heart. The Unitarians arrived at their heresies, the truths that would not let them go, most often through the workings of their heads, through their valuing of intellectual integrity. They questioned the official lines of reasoning, sought to come to their own conclusions, insisted that the concept of the Trinity was not intellectually sound, that humans must use their God-given minds to question and understand God, and later that the divinity of Jesus and the inerrancy of the Bible were both suspect. Eventually, many coming to believe that belief in God was not even required for religious sensibilities. The key Unitarian messages started most often in the head, all very five-ish. Again, oversimplified and one-dimensional, but also true enough. There were quite a few more Unitarians than Universalists when these two traditions wove themselves together 63 years ago next week. And five-ishness has been strong, dominant, really, throughout. Since I first joined a UU congregation 35 years ago, I can remember countless surveys in which congregation members named that what they most valued in their Sunday services, what they were looking for, was intellectual stimulation. That has been moderating in the last 30 years, but it's still prominent in our consolidated tradition's DNA. Now, being five-ish myself, I am not one to deny the appeal of intellectual stimulation. I would point out, however, as I have to many a person who's tried to frame intellectual stimulation as the opposite of, or as mutually exclusive of, emotional rich transcendence, that we are talking about stimulation. Intellectual pursuits are very emotional for some people. As Carl Sagan, a five, put it, understanding is a kind of ecstasy. It's not about intellect versus emotion. It's about what exactly turns you on. In other words, it's about pluralism. Being a five-ish nine, I'm usually trying to steer down a balance beam in the middle of our services. I want to meet both the head and the heart. What I would like to point out gently to those of us who have strong fiveness in our personalities is the possibility that our intellectual quests, as thrilling and satisfying as they are, maybe, at least in part, at least some of the time, are safe substitute for the more demanding and frightening aspects of connecting to and relating to other people. Our safe internal substitute for living more fully in a world we cannot control. Our minds, as beautiful as they are inside, may sometimes be the place we go to avoid what feels painful and uncomfortable in ourselves or in others. We may be trying to fill a hole with something that can never really fill it. The wisdom for fives from wise teachers of the Enneagram is that information will not heal us, will not take away our anxiety, will not in the end keep us connected, will not ground us in reality. Information is not the true source of our worth. Empathy, they teach us, is what will heal us. If we want to grow this part of us healthily, cultivate empathy and compassion, they say. Practice letting people in. Practice feeling what we feel and letting our feelings out a little at a time. Practice allowing ourselves to know what we really want and need. Notice, they suggest, when we start to lose contact with what we're feeling and start to withdraw into our mind, when we start analyzing rather than experiencing what's happening, when we're observing rather than relating. Notice when we're thinking our feelings rather than feeling them. Invest not in getting more into our heads, they suggest, but in getting more into our bodies, which are inevitably immediate. Notice in our bodies the signs of what we're feeling. Cultivate humility, they offer. Not having all the right information or answers or expertise, but in knowing that we are okay and enough and loved and worthy, even if we aren't the expert and don't know everything. Realize that we are already connected. Then we'll learn true understanding, they say. Then we'll know what's really most worth knowing. I suggest that all of this is important for our five heavy Unitarian Universalist tradition. To continue to bring more of the Universalist heart and emotional intelligence to the Unitarian head and intellect. To embrace our commonalities and our differences with love, curiosity, and respect, and so to liberate the best in all of us. To liberate the best in all of us by bringing those together. The work at hand, may we be so. May we find here with each other freedom for our minds and our hearts to seek the truth unimpeded wherever the light of our conscience leads us. May we foster here with each other a spirit of love that lifts our endlessly searching hearts. May we offer here each other our generous and liberating curiosity and our radical respect. And so in given moments, maybe even shift the axis of the earth, or maybe even the axis of the universe for a moment, and so find our way home. I invite us to remind each other that we are in this journey together with these words for our community benediction. Together, let us carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.